Good afternoon, Facebook. I'm Skip Bayless. I'm coming to you live from West Los Angeles. Quick somber note. I'm sure a lot of people have been shook up by the shooting at the church in South Texas, 40-odd miles south of San Antonio. I am too. Said a prayer for all those impacted, all those involved. You just never know. But life goes on, games go on, and I'm going to go on. Another quick note, I usually have my quote-unquote daughter, Hazel, our little Maltese, who's now a year and a couple of weeks old, on for a quick cameo before I launch into what I'm going to say ahead of the Cowboys game and post-Eagles game. Hazel's having a rough time. She's, I told you before, suffering through an ailment, and at least I think she's going to make it, which is a big deal for my wife Ernestine and me. We thought we'd lost her for a couple days, but she did have to get all of her hair shaved, so she's not in a real good mood right now. And I don't think she'd be real keen on her cameo on Facebook Live today, because she also has a big cone around her neck to keep her from licking her ailment. So it's been a little bit of a rough ride around here, but onward and upward and back to the unreal world of the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I first want to congratulate the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought it was a spectacular performance today. Honestly, I thought that Denver would give Philly all it wanted just ahead of its bye week. I thought maybe this would be the game they would have a little letdown in. I thought Carson Wentz might have a little trouble against the Denver defense. So savvy, so quick in the secondary, so mentally quick. And he riddled the Denver secondary. And obviously, Brock Osweiler started for Denver, which was a gimme for the Philadelphia defense, but it was flying. Fly, Eagles, fly. And now I can say, bye, Eagles, bye, as in B-Y-E, as in bye week, because they get a week off ahead of their next game, and they put the pressure squarely back on the Cowboys. And I've said this 4-game stretch for Dallas leading up to the 4th game, which is Philadelphia at Jerry World. It's must win every week. It's do or die. If they want a chance to again, now it looks like they're going to have to win the division to make the playoffs, thanks to the 2 blown home games against, obviously, the Rams and Aaron Rodgers. They had a 24-13 lead on the Rams in the first half, and they had a 21-6 lead on Aaron Rodgers in the first half. And they blew both games because they did not have Sean Lee to close the deal in the second half, their driving force of their defense. I'm convinced if Sean Lee had been healthy for those 2 games, they would have won, hung on to win both those games, and we would have a very different conversation right now. But because it's just 4-3, and Philly's lost only once, and has played all the Dallas has already had its bye week. So what's it, 4-3 to what's it up to 8? 7. What are the Eagles now? 7-1, I guess. It's getting tough. It's win or go home every week as far as if you want to do something special this year, which I think this team is fully capable of doing. So, quick thoughts that I've been speaking on Undisputed. Again, you can see me versus Shannon Sharpe versus Tony Gonzalez versus cast of dozens tomorrow morning, 9:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Quick thoughts on Ezekiel Elliott. He has to keep fighting. I know there was a report by Adam Schefter on ESPN today that Zeke's legal team had offered the NFL a settlement. Again, if that's true, I'm extremely disappointed in Zeke's legal team, and I don't know if Jerry has something to do with that. I thought maybe they were taking it game by game, and obviously if Dallas loses today and it looks like they're starting to fall out of the possible even playoff race, then maybe you swallow the suspension. But again, I'm all for Zeke when he says, I'm fighting for my good name. And I'm going to say it again. There is no way any court in this land should allow Roger Goodell to, quote unquote, convict Ezekiel Elliott of domestic violence without credible proof or evidence, without credible testimony. And that is exactly what has happened. And that's what they're arguing in court now that they got the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. They said, do you, in their brief that they filed, this again, Zeke's legal team, do you want to let Roger Goodell operate in what's called a star chamber? It's a legal term for a court that was allowed to operate in England all the way up until 1641. I know this is ancient history, but I do like the term star chamber because that court was known for no checks and balances. It could just do whatever it wanted to do without anyone looking over its shoulder, without fairness. It could operate secretively. It could operate the way Roger Goodell is now allowed to operate by the CBA. And again, when the CBA was voted upon in 2012, the NFL didn't really care, unfortunately, about domestic violence. And the players weren't really keen on, we're going to let him have judge, jury, and execution over everything, because at that point, all you're thinking of is, okay, it's over DUIs, drug suspensions, conduct unbecoming. Unfortunately, nobody focused on domestic violence or what about sexual assault? Can he bring down the curtain on sexual assault? And again, it gives him leeway to operate and come down with any suspension that he wants to levy, no matter what the law of the land decides. So with Ezekiel Elliott, remember, not one, but two police departments investigated and cleared him of the accusations of domestic violence brought by the accuser. And both times it was the same accuser, and both times they interviewed said accuser and found her not credible enough. Now, again, this has happened again and again, and Joy Taylor on Undisputed makes the point, and she's been a victim of domestic violence, that many times the police look the other way. They don't have the wherewithal to really investigate these thoroughly. He said, she said, and too often they opt for he said. And I get that. But in this case, it happened twice. And then it happened a critical third time when Roger Goodell assigned someone he had hired in 2012 named Kia Roberts, who went to Duke undergraduate and Vanderbilt Law School and chose to serve the first 8 years of her career as the assistant DA in Brooklyn and did dozens of domestic violence cases, along with all kinds of murders, drug charges, and anything you can name. She's been there and done it all. But she looked into the eyes of a lot of domestic violence victims, and she heard their testimony. And I think she has a pretty good eye for real and not real. And in this case, she interviewed and was the only person on Goodell's entire New York staff to interview said accuser, not once or twice, but 6 times. And Kia Roberts said, not credible enough. I recommend no suspension. And Roger Goodell didn't even invite her to the final meeting in which the punishment of Ezekiel Elliott was decided upon. And she went rogue on him and actually contacted the NFLPA and said, would you let me testify on your behalf at the appeals meeting for Zeke within the NFL, led by Harold Henderson? And they did, and she testified, and Harold Henderson still ruled 6-game suspension. So it went to court. Obviously, first court, because the NFLPA filed quickly, unfortunately just slightly before the appeals process was concluded within the NFL. But they wanted jurisdiction. They got it in Texas, and a Judge Mazant, who's not from Texas, he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, laughed the NFL out of his courtroom and said, clearly the appeals process that you just put him through was fundamentally unfair. So then it goes to a court of a woman in New York named Judge Fela, and there are 40-odd judges in her Southern Circuit of Manhattan who could have handled this case. But she chose to handle it while on vacation, even though her husband works for the law firm that forged through the CBA that she kept referring to throw Zeke out of her court, his case out of her court. Wait a second. That's not a conflict of interest? Is that not at least a hint of impropriety? As she signed in her declaration when she took over as a judge, any hint of impropriety involving my husband and his law firm, I will recuse myself. Did she recuse herself? No, she did not. She said Ezekiel Elliott will serve his 6-game suspension. I think it just stinks to high heaven, and I hope that that can be brought up in the appeals session that Zeke, I assume he's going to have it this week. I don't even know if he can get on the docket in the Court of Appeals, the Second Circuit. But if he does, I hope that point is made that she did have a clear conflict or at least a hint of impropriety. And again, I know the point will be made that you cannot allow Roger Goodell decide domestic violence. You know, this isn't just Tom Brady. Did he deflate footballs? Did he cheat and lie about it? This is domestic violence. You're going to allow Roger Goodell to taint and brand Ezekiel Elliott as a domestic abuser for the rest of his life. He's fighting for his good name, and I hope they fight. Is it taking a lot out of Zeke? You better believe it is. Is it taking a lot out of the team? Yeah, you better believe it is. And now back on the football field, I sort of got myself at peace this week thinking, well, maybe they're just going to give it up. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if they got filed in time in the Court of Appeals. And so I started thinking, could they win this game without Zeke? Heck, yes, they could, because you know what happens when you have a good football team. You just raise the level. You take it up a level, and everybody plays a little bit harder. And I still think that with Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, Rod Smith, I just think they have enough behind that line that opened those gaping holes for Ezekiel Elliott at Washington in the driving rain last week. I just thought they could beat the Chiefs. And then we see where the chips fall after that. But the point is, Ezekiel Elliott, as I've been saying from the start, has a good case. And again, they're just arguing procedure right now, but you have to have a case. You have to have merits of your case to argue procedure. I wish they'd take it to the Supreme Court if they had to, because I think this would win at the Supreme Court level, just as I thought Tom Brady would win at the Supreme Court level. But the problem is, the big bad NFL, City Hall is in the cliche form. You can't fight City Hall. They have such finances, such power, such ability to pull strings, especially in Manhattan, that it's just hard to win it because it takes so much out of said player during the middle of the season. Zeke hasn't looked like himself until the last two games. I don't know if he's hugely relieved, but now he's got to face another day in court next week. And after a while, they get their pound of flesh sort of off the field just through the legal process. But he's back today. And actually, this is weird. This is just my emotions of the moment. I felt a little better about this game without Zeke than with Zeke. Now, I don't know if the team is sort of inflated, deflated, and they're not sure where they are, and it just takes so much out of the team psyche where they get up for playing without Zeke and then he's back. Are they jubilant, or are they confused? Are they kind of off balance? I don't know. Do I think they're better in Kansas City? I just do. Because to me, Dak Prescott is a much better Alex Smith. They're similar in that they're game managers, but listen, when it's time to make a big throw, well, both of them can make big throws. Alex Smith has played great this year. It's been his best year by far. What's he up to? 16 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But the Cowboy defense is starting to come together, and I do start to trust it enough that it can at least hold Kansas City to a low roar. But this is time. It's time to rise and shine. The other reason I was ready to go forward without Zeke is because I wanted Dak Prescott to prove once and for all, especially to Shannon Sharpe, that he is the most valuable player on this team just because of the position he plays. I think he belongs in the MVP race. I know right now Carson Wentz is running away with it, but boy, we got a lot of football left, and we got 2 Dallas-Philadelphia games left to go. One's the last day of the year in Philadelphia, and I sure hope there's something riding on that game when we get that far. But today is the day. Here we go again. Got to do it. Must win. If you want to be great, if you want to have a big year, you got to win this game. I believe they can win this game. I believe they will win this game. But the point is, this team has been knocked mentally off balance, and it's time for Dak Prescott once again to take over. I think this game will be more about Dak than Zeke. That's just me. I think that Dak Prescott just consistently makes big plays with his arm and his legs. He is just a much better Alex Smith. That starts today. Dak's climb, his push to get back even in the MVP race starts today. I'm all for Zeke continuing to fight, and maybe the NFL will win, sort of win effectively, even if it's losing its case in court just by taking so much out of Ezekiel Elliott. But I'm going to go higher scoring today because I respect Kansas City's offense enough that I think it's going to score on Dallas's defense. I don't know why Jerry Jones at the trade deadline didn't do something. He said we're going to add some firepower. I don't know if he's talking about offense or defense. I'm fine with the offense. I still think it can be the best offense in pro football. The defense scares me because it's so young, but it's so well coached. It's more about the system than about any one cog in the system. And the kids are going to have to play at a high level. And I know they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to get some cohesion, some unity, some ability to play within the system and play very effectively within the system. But I'm going to go higher scoring today. I'm going to go 34-29, Dallas over Kansas City. I think it'll be a shootout. I think it'll be a barn burner. I don't love it that Tony Romo's in the house today doing the broadcast because he just scares me. He always scared me. I like Tony personally. He gave me a lot of wow moments, and he gave me a lot of hugely depressed moments. And it scares me that he's going to be like a jinx today to Dak, but he was around some last year. He wanted his job back, and especially in Pittsburgh. That's when he made his concession speech in the locker room after Pittsburgh to Stephen Jones. He said, what he's doing is bleeping hard. And at least he was there, and it didn't jinx Dak last year. So I'm going for Dak today. I'm going Dak to have a big game. I'm going for Dallas's offense to have a big game. I'm going for Dallas to stay afloat, stay barely on the heels of the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. I will talk to you afterwards. Over and out, Facebook.